My name is Sarah Moore, and this is a story about second chances. Thank you for giving me the chance to tell it. The story goes back many years to the time when my son was somewhere between 1 and 2 years old. And it was a hard year for me. I was comparing myself to other moms a lot. I was comparing myself to my own mom, who had 5 children and somehow did it, and to the other moms at preschool who all seemed to effortlessly glide through their days. And I was comparing my child a lot. Specifically, he had never slept through the night. And at 18 months, that means I had not slept through the night for the last 18 months. I tried letting him cry it out once. It was a harrowing experience. He woke up every 20 minutes throughout the night, and I finally gave up. I'm glad I gave up and never went back to doing that. But it meant that sleep was a very rare commodity for me. And I was getting up every morning tired, bringing him to work, or bringing him to daycare, dropping him off, going to work tired, coming home tired. And the time that I'm going to talk about, we didn't know yet, but he had asthma, and that's what was waking him up. Every night he would lie down. That's when it was hardest for him to breathe. And he'd wake up with difficulty breathing, cry. We'd go in, put him back down. While we were holding him, he'd be fine. And then he'd get back down, have trouble breathing again, and wake up. So it was a cycle, and it had not been diagnosed yet. And it was really difficult. And the time that I'm going to talk about, he had become sick. And just as he started to get better, I started to get sick. But there was nothing I could do about it. I'd used up all my sick time. So I knew that as soon as he was well, I was going to go back to work. And this was probably my last day off that I was spending with my little sick guy. And I decided we would go get a movie because he was feeling better and needed something to do. So we went to the video store, which kind of dates when this happened, to look at videos. And he didn't want any of them. He was cranky. He was having none of it. He'd seen them, or he hadn't seen them, or he didn't want to see them. And I knew what that meant. It meant he was ready for a nap. So we packed him back up into his little car, put him in the car seat, and he fell asleep on the way home. And it was golden. I was so happy to have him fall asleep that I drove around a little while, letting him sleep. And it was so quiet and so peaceful, and I just wanted it to keep going. And the heat was up to full in the car. It was late February, early March. My husband calls it sleeping gas. It helps the little babies sleep, but it was just heat. It wasn't sleeping gas, because I was awake, but I needed some fresh air. So I pulled over in front of our house and left the car going and the heat on, and I got out, did some stretches, walked around a little, got some fresh air, had a minute to myself, away from the baby, away from work, away from everything. And then I looked over, and a car was pulling down the street, and it pulled over next to my car, and a guy hopped out of the passenger side and into the driver's side of my car and drove away with my baby in the car. And I think, but this was 17 years ago, and I might be making it up, that I ran after it. I know I ran after it, and I think I touched it. I think my fingers touched the back of the car as it pulled away. But I feel like if that had been true, my nails would have dug in and it would have dragged me by the hands, because there was no way. I wanted that car to get away from me, but it did. I saw both of them pull up over the edge of the hill and disappear. And then I pulled out my phone and I called 911. And I remembered in this split second as I was dialing, my labor coach when I had the baby telling me that you shouldn't try to hide what's going on when you call the doctor when you go into labor. Let them hear it, because they're using your voice to know how bad this is. And that didn't happen when I went into labor. I tried to cover up. This time I let it happen. I just let them hear how panicked I was. I let them hear what kind of what kind of moment I was having, because they needed to know that there was a baby in that car, and that was my baby, and he'd been pulled away from me, and it felt like my heart had been pulled out, and I needed him back, and I needed them to know that. And so I just let it all out in that phone call. And it was 90% sincere, and 10% I was trying to convince them. I needed them to get there now, and I needed them to hear. And a little tiny part of me knew that I was doing that so that they would know. Well, they got there fast. I don't know how long, but seconds, it seems like. And then they were maddeningly calm. And I know they took it seriously. I think about it now, and I know exactly how serious they were about it. But I wanted them to just start driving. And they sat with me in the car and took a description and listened to me and found out what was happening. And it felt like forever. It felt like forever trying to tell them all of the details when all I wanted to do is run in the last direction I saw my baby. And just about that time, they got a radio call that my car had been found. And we drove to it, and it was about a block away, block and a half, right over the hill. As soon as it was out of sight, the guy must have looked in the rear view mirror. And of all of the bad decisions that were made today, he made one good decision. He got out of that car, and he must have ran. The engine was still running. The driver door was open. The passenger door was open on the rear passenger door. And someone, I don't know who, had unclicked the seatbelt and let my child out. And he was running around, and there were people all around him. There were police officers. There were medics. He had a little firefighter hat that they had given him. He was crying his little eyes out and ran over and gave me a big hug. And he was back. And my heart went back into my chest. It didn't heal up right away, but it went back in there where it lives. I answered all of the questions the police had. And I expected to be in some kind of trouble. I thought they might bring me down for questioning. I didn't know what would happen, but they could tell that I'd made a terrible, foolish mistake, but not done anything else. And they needed my car to get fingerprints from, so they drove me home. On the way, they told me what they would have done if the car had gone further, which is they would have pulled out in front of it, blocked it in on both sides, and if it still didn't stop, they would have shot the tires. And they said they were really glad they didn't have to do that. They don't like doing that, and I'm glad too. I went inside with my baby, and he wanted to watch Finding Nemo, and that is the most emotionally wrenching movie I could have possibly chosen to watch with a little baby at a moment like that. But we watched Finding Nemo and settled down, and I wish I could say he hadn't, but he took a nap and then didn't sleep well that night, and we were back to normal. My second chance was getting my baby back. My second chance was knowing that it was still going to be difficult. He still wasn't going to sleep through the night. I was still going to compare myself, but I had my baby. I had him back. And my other second chance was I got to see everybody differently. I got to see every parent and every child differently. I had a level of empathy and compassion that I hadn't had before. And when I hear stories now, and I hear them about children separated from their parents, when they try to enter our country, children being kept in detention camps, I know what that felt like for the 3 minutes it happened to me. I don't know what it feels like to think that it might be forever. I don't know what it feels like to lose a child, or to lose a child that you know is still alive, and you can't get to. Um, but I know what it feels like for a few minutes, and I don't want that for anybody. That's my story, and that little baby is graduating this year and going on to the University of Washington. So it's a second chance. Grateful for it every day of my life.